All right. Hello, everybody. It's the fourth Wednesday of the month, and that means we are doing our Ask Me Anything or our Q&A, however you want to put it, where we answer questions about pet training, pet behavior, or animal training or animal behavior in general. If you have any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. I'd love to answer those for anyone. Just go ahead, put your questions in the chat, and I will get to those as they come through. If you just want to say hi, if you have questions about something going on with a pet at home, or if you have seen something online that you had a question on, go ahead, put any of those in, and we will, get to those. So it has been a pretty good good few weeks here at Buckman Best Behaviors. We've had a number of interesting behaviors crop up. We have a lot of the commons. I think a lot of the COVID puppy situations are fully in swing at this point in time. Plus, it is puppy season as a whole, so we have that going on for us. If there's any issues with the connection, please let me know. I'm in a temporary undisclosed location currently. But yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead, put those into the chat, and I'd be happy to answer those. I've got a few things that are in the works. We've got a potential new therapy dog in our community that we'll be possibly working towards. We have a few other things here and there. Trying to think if there's been anything real interesting, like out of the ordinary behaviors that I've been experiencing so far lately. It's just been a lot of the very common stuff, a lot of the just hyperactive puppy scenarios. But I'd like to, once again, if you have any questions, go ahead, put those into the chat, and I'd be happy to answer those for you. Now, we do have a few things that I've been thinking of coming up because we are approaching summer. And of course, summer brings a lot of the school kids back during the daytime. And a lot of dogs start freaking out about that because they're not used to seeing those kids during those times of the day. So they tend to be more reactive during the summer months than they would be during the regular school year. So a lot of those issues can be cropping up pretty soon. Usually with those, I do a little bit of distraction work and have them focus on rewards that appear elsewhere. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. If you just want to say hi, let me know that you're there. That works too. I did actually, no, we talked about that the last one. Never mind. All right. Looks like we have a couple people watching. If you just have any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. Let me know you're there. Just say hi, say anything along those lines. I'd be happy to answer them. If you have any questions whatsoever, whether it has to do with pet training, pet behavior, if you have new puppies, that seems to be a very common thing right now. Or if you have some, maybe you saw a meme that had something interesting, you want to confirm it one way or the other. I've got I have multiple decades worth of animal experience, both wild and domestic. So probably have a good chance of being able to answer those questions for you. If you have anything coming up with regards to some basic issues around your house with your pets, go ahead and put those in. Or if you just want to brag about your pets, go ahead and put that in there as well into the chat, and I'd love to talk about it. Right now, I think I'm running into a lot more. I've been talking about the COVID puppies for quite a while, and I think right now we're running into a lot more of that COVID puppy situation. And basically all that is it's a lot of people got pets while they were working from home, and those animals are reacting much better or more reactive because they're just not as used to the people being out of the house. So we're seeing more separation anxieties and things of that. Plus, they've been seeing fewer guests, so they're not as used to that as well. So those are the primary issues when you hear trainers talking about COVID puppies. That's probably what they're talking about. Is just usually that combination of anxiety due to separation, because they just aren't used to it. They don't have that emotional callus, if you will, or just used to the owner being away for longer periods of time, or the situation of the just no guests coming over. A lot of dogs have to get used to the idea of guests coming to their house. They might be okay with seeing people on walks, but as I like to talk about it, there are antecedents. There's different scenarios, different things that can trigger different behaviors. These would be things like one example of an antecedent change is just simply going from your house to the park. Your dog is going to exhibit completely different behaviors potentially, because those are two different environments, and they learn to act one way at one place and one way at the other. And if they're used to seeing something at one place and not another, that can crop up into an issue. I am adding a few more small species. I always enjoy the non-standard domestic animals whenever they crop up. Remind me of my time in the zoo. Oh, here we got our first question. Let's see here. Our first question is, how do you go about stopping a puppy from bugging an old-timer brother? This one I get quite a bit. So whenever I go into a client's home, the first thing I work on is what we call target. A target training is when you get an animal to touch a body part to something. So the first thing I do is I actually get that animal to start going and targeting the owner's hand. And when they target the owner's hand with their nose is what I target. So technically it can be anything. We've had animals use their hips up against fences as a target. We've had different, technically putting their paw in your hand is a target, anything where they get a body part to something. The one I focus on is getting their nose to touch the hand. And the reason for that is because I'm not used to having Coke. The reason is you can then get them to look away from things. Because if they have to look at the target to get their nose to touch it, then they have to stop looking at the other thing. So if they're having issues with different stimuli, whether it be excitement because they see another dog, or frustration or anger because they see some other stimulus, then you can at least get them to look away. Now, the other thing with target, it also kind of becomes a very good recall. And as I said, it makes them so they can't look. They have to look at the target, because you could move it and they need to focus in on it. So they're less likely to turn their head to look back at the stimulus that they were originally at. So once I get the target trained in, so they boop their nose to my hand, basically anytime that they're bugging the other animal, and the other animal, usually we run into this when there's two scenarios. You can have an old timer who just can't defend themselves against the puppy. They move too slow. They can't deal with it. So you have to be the adult in the situation and guide them away. You can have the old timer who's overly cranky and it will escalate too quickly. So you want to mitigate that. Or you have the old timer who's too nice, and they won't escalate or teach the puppy no with their little a very natural snap kind of thing. So you'd want to bring that into another direction. So what you do is you get them to target. Hello, Vera. So back to the original question. So what you do is you get them to target first, and then you have this thing called a differential. You start doing what's called differential reinforcement. What that means is you have the old behavior that you don't want, and you now ask for a new behavior to replace it. So the new behavior is every time he starts bugging the old guy, is you ask for the target, and you reinforce it with rewards or play. Rewards, well, I shouldn't say and or. Play can be a reward. You just got to reward it with either food or play or something that's more exciting than the old timer. And then every time they leave the old timer, they get that. Now, You can't just say target, have them walk away from the old timer, because if this is a split second behavior, once they touch that, they're done. So what they're going to do is go right back to the thing they were doing before, which is why I actually would prefer to reward them with play. So they target, go to you, and now you have to initiate play with them, because part of the reason they're doing it is they want play. That's what the puppy is. That's what the puppy is after. They just want someone to play with. And if they don't have anything else, they're going to go to the old timer. So by training them to target, you now have a way to ask them to leave things alone and go different directions. Another thing I would do, another key important part of this, is every time they get real excited, like, when they get the look, because antecedents are things that not only are in the environment around the puppy or involve all of that, antecedents also are put off. They're the physical things the animal does before they do the behavior, the look to the side, or sometimes I like to call it the stink eye, which is a little different between different dogs, but usually the owners know. They're like, oh yeah, that's the look they get right before bad stuff happens, or they just get very hyper. So you want to actually catch that beforehand. So you want to, and once you see the puppy start getting excited, maybe doing the butt wiggle at the older pup, that's when you want to target, because you want to interrupt that behavior so that it doesn't even begin. So you can, because every time it does go to completion, that puppy is rewarding itself. It's getting a reward in its head, a little endorphin rush, because it got to play, which is the only thing it wanted in the first place. So if you can interrupt that before it completes it, it doesn't reward itself, and the behavior doesn't keep snowballing and getting worse and worse. So what you're going to need to do is distract the puppy and then give it something else to do, whether it be a tug game or something along those lines. All right. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. Vera said hi. And if you want to just say hi and let me know how you're doing, that sounds great as well. But I'm taking any questions about training animal behavior. And Cindy, let me know if that made sense to you, or if you need some more clarification as well, with that differential reinforcement technique where you have the dog go in a different direction. So, all right. If you do have any questions, go ahead, put those in the chat, whether it has to do with dogs or whether it has to do with just about anything at all. My name is Whitney. I am a pet trainer and behaviors with Buckman Best Behaviors. Started the business back in 2018 when I went solo, but I have been training in the Garden City area since 2010. And I started my training journey actually back in, I did start my training journey, I'd say back in 2000, or no, not even that, 1992, 91, somewhere in there. So it's been a little while that I've been training animals, training dogs, things of that nature. You can reach me at BBBehaviors.com. You can also call my cell at 620-805-9429 if you have any questions, or if you have anything that you want to schedule anything or anything along those lines. Just let me know. You can also email me at whitbuckman, WHITBUCHMAN, at bbbehaviors.com. But if you have any questions or want to just say hi, go ahead, put those into the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. Whether they have to do with domestic animals, or maybe a wild animal, or some weird behavior you saw them do and you're wondering why they did that. Cindy, as I said, if you need any clarifications on what I talked about earlier, just let me know, and I'd be happy to get to that. I will be on until 9 o'clock answering any questions people have. Now, one thing that I noticed is starting to pick up now that the vaccines are getting out there a little bit more and more. I do also do pet sitting. That is a little bit more limited service because I can only do it so many at a time. It was something I added to the business only because out of requests by clients. They wanted some, particularly some of them had more higher need animals that you couldn't just take to the a normal situation. So I assisted in those areas. So that's why I had a good relationship with those animals. So that's what I started doing, and as well. But I'd say still 99% of my business is just doing behavior work with a lot of animals. I had one great success this week that now I remember. I got a report back. I was very happy. We were working on a relationship between a large dog and a small breed dog. The large dog ended up attacking it at one point in time and did another attack on another dog. After my analysis, I determined that it was basically kind of a fear-based and as well as a guarding-based kind of scenario. But we were actually able to work through some desensitizing programs with that pup. So she's getting more and more, the larger pup's getting more and more confident with the scenario. Plus, we were actually able to repair the relationship between the larger dog, who actually is still a puppy in the end stages of puppyhood, and the older small dog, to the point that the client actually texted me, and they were so happy because one of the problems was after the incident, the small dog was deathly afraid of the bigger dog and didn't want anything to do with her. Oh, I see a note now. And I'll get back to that. Oh, okay. I know what you're talking. I got something to say to that, Cindy, here in a second. So anyway, the larger dog actually was decent, and the younger dog, they both need to be desensitized to each other, because the older dog, or the larger dog, I should say, she actually was younger. She just needed to realize that not everybody was after her, and she had to just get used to the other dog reacting to things. But also the smaller dog needed their relationship repaired with the bigger dog, and the client was exceedingly happy because they hadn't interacted in months, and then suddenly the younger dog, or the small dog. It's hard to do without names. The small dog had actually started reacting and play bowing to the larger dog, and they actually started playing again, which they hadn't done in many, many months, apparently. So we're not only able to fix the behavior with the larger dog, but also repair that interaction between the two. Okay, so Cindy, this is in regards to the puppy. Helpful, but she does not know the meaning of no. She actually thinks it's her middle name. This is the issue. So that's why I actually don't if you notice in my description on what to do, I never said to tell the puppy no. I told what we were going to do is actually teach her to target, and then when she does that behavior that we don't want, we actually start asking her to target, which would take her away from the older dog, and then didn't give her something else to do. Now, this is actually one of the problems. What you just mentioned is actually one of the problems with what we call positive punishment. It doesn't sound positive, but basically when you say or yell or do things like that, you're technically doing what we call as positive punishment. Now, positive punishment, I wish I had a good graphic right now. Maybe I'll find one to kind of show what we call on the operant conditioning scale. So, but when you're doing that no kind of thing and you say it so much, what happens is they become desensitized to it. Either A, there's no punishment that follows, so there's no reason to, or B, it's not consistent punishment, so they don't even put an association with what no means. And also C, sometimes even if you do put punishment, they can eventually get a kind of a callous, or they get used to that punishment, and they will eventually just need to either keep adding punishment. Eventually, you usually meet a limit. But that's the problem with no. Also, in behavior, there's a saying where you can't do a not. You can't do a not behavior. If somebody tells me not to walk, what if I ran? I could run, and I'm technically following the rules. If I flew, if I jumped, I do a bunch of different things, but really the person doesn't want you to move. But you can't. It's very difficult to narrow down a not behavior, especially when you're talking to another animal and you don't have language to discuss it. So instead, what I focus on is alternative behaviors. So instead of saying no, I give the animal something else to do. If they jump up, then we train them to sit, because you can't sit and jump at the same time. And if you do it correctly, they'll start sitting during all the moments that they would have previously jumped, because you have changed their criteria, and now that they think that's what they need to do. So usually the problem is just a slight, basically a miscommunication. They just don't understand, and that's usually where the problem with the no comes from. That is a very, very common issue that a lot of people have. The puppy doesn't understand no, so then we end up in those scenarios. So usually I try to focus as best we can on finding an alternative behavior that works a lot better in those scenarios. All right. If anybody has any other questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. If you have anything that you want to say, if you just want to say hi, go ahead and put that into the chat as well. We had one say hi a little earlier, and but all that is extremely helpful. But if you have any questions whatsoever, whether it's about animals or whether they're domestic or wild. Oh, hey Buffy, I just was talking to you a little bit ago. Speaking of maybe more therapy dogs in the community, that'd be fun. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. If you just want to say hi or how your day's doing, or if you want to brag about something your animal's done recently. Buffy and I Buffy called me because she wanted to brag a little earlier, so I'm going to brag for her. One of the pups that we worked with, her most recent is a German Shepherd, and we worked on it, and she's now been trained to get her nails trimmed and dremelled. I believe dremelled. Correct me if she doesn't do dribbling or just okay, that one's funny. Okay, got a couple more popping up. All right. So anyway, with Buffy, we worked on her dogs getting nail trims at an early age, so she'd like it. Okay, I'm gonna have to question on that one what that means. Okay, so nail clippers. So we use nail clippers on her, but basically she's getting bigger and needed better lighting. And Buffy does do grooming as well. So she had all the grooming table. She never had her pup on the grooming table, and apparently they just asked, and the dog jumped up and sat there and got her nails did, and it was nice and purty and completely calm through the whole scenario. Okay, I'm going to go through this joke one here. Okay. What do you do about a dog who has to be the center of attention? That one's funny because that's my roommate, and she's commenting on one of our own dogs at the house who literally gets upset anytime he's not the center of attention. Has to put himself there at all times, which there's ways, but that's a battle I just haven't chosen to fight. Okay, this one, puppy running off, keeping them in their own yard or space. All right. So the big key is they never go out without a leash or outside of a fence. Also, if they are running off, then they have to be, this is actually going to be a lot of management at first. You have to make sure that you're always out there with them. They have to be monitored at all times. You can work on recalls, but the problem is, and there's going to be different breeds that have worse off with this, for example, Huskies and anything that likes to explore, or I should say has a propensity to want to explore. Then as soon as they get off, as soon as they go, you're going to have a very difficult time outweighing that exploration energy and excitement. So usually the thing I say is first we do management, then we do recall training to make sure that they stay with you. Otherwise, there's really no good way. You can use an electric fence, but those can have some side effects. For example, I know of some that started using them, and the dog thought the shock came from grass, so they stopped going on grass and would only go on concrete from then on, because they didn't understand how or why the shock was happening. But that one's actually a very difficult one. So basically what you do is you do a lot of recall work, but also you got to make sure that they don't get out, because every time they get out, that's going to be one memory in the wrong direction. And then they're going to learn to do it again and again and again. Some dogs don't have that exploration drive, and you're lucky if they don't. But when they do, it becomes a very hard thing. So I would say just make sure they don't get out in the first place, which is sometimes easier said than done. But it's a myth that dogs will just stay in their yard with no type of barrier. You'll get every so often one, but those are by and far the minority. You should have control of your animal at all times. What I would do though is desensitize them to stimulus that would make them run off. So I'd have exercises where they're outside with some of that stuff, but just focusing on a bucket or something that you're involved with, so that they ignore the bunny running across the street and things like that nature. But once they learn that they can and do run away, it's going to be a much, much more difficult battle that you're going to be fighting on that one. But otherwise, the thing is, you got to have higher end reinforcement at your direction. So if I like to look at everything with a value, kind of like dollar tag on it, and some things for dogs is like $1, like the kibble that they always get, and maybe those milk bone biscuits are $10-20 in the dog's mind. Then you get to the moist treats, $50 to $100. Then you get actual chicken ham, a couple $100. But that rabbit running across the street is probably going to still be $1,000. So that makes that very difficult. Okay, is there a chunk chart for dogs? I think I know what you're talking about. Are you talking about like? Are you just saying like their body conditioning? Oh yeah. Yes. Oh, 100%. Yes. Okay. Chunk chart. Okay. Yes. So that's just slang term for the body conditioning chart. Yeah. Look up body condition in dogs. All animals, basically, when they do a body condition, for the most part, they'll either go on a 1 to 10 scale. The more popular one is a 1 to 5 scale. 3 is perfect. 4 is overweight. 5 is obese. 2 is underweight, and 1 is emaciated. You should be able to see 3 or feel like 3 to 5 ribs of the dog. If you can't feel any ribs, they're probably on the overweight category. Most dogs in the U.S. are like cats, are actually overweight, and people, when they see a healthy weighted dog, when they see a healthy weighted dog, then they think that it is underweight. But really, a lot of what people consider underweight is actually the perfect weight. To be underweight, you have to feel most of the ribs or see most of the ribs on their sides. And even then, you still take it into consideration. But yes, look up body condition dogs, and you'll find a bunch. Really, it depends on the breed, because we've bred them so many different body shapes. If there's if the shoulders to hip, there's no indentation or hourglass kind of situation going on, the dog's overweight. Almost guaranteed. There's a few breeds, and I'm thinking of like the English bulldogs and pugs and things that might not quite fit that perfectly. But for the most part, that would be it. If the midsection doesn't dip in at all, then they're overweight. If it dips out and they just are big round balls, then obviously they're obese. So yes, there is a chunk chart for doggos. All right. If anybody has any questions, go ahead, put those into the chat. I'd be happy to answer those for you. Once again, my name is Whitney. I am a pet trainer and pet behaviorist. I work with more than just dogs. I actually have got a few bird clients, cat clients, and now pig clients too. You can find me more information at BBBehaviors.com, or you can reach me at 620-805-9429, or you can email me at whitbuckman@bbbehaviors.com. All right. If anybody has any questions, go ahead, put those into the chat, or if you just want to say hi, let me know that you're there. I already have people talking about our own, some previous clients, and my own doggo. Oh, Greywind, that dog in my house. A lot of times I look at him and just say, it's a good thing you're pretty. Because he is very much attention-starved little boy that wants everybody to constantly be looking at him. All right. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them. Oh, Lord, I don't know what that means. Don't know what that means. Unless maybe my wife is getting home and then... Okay, squat. Okay, let's see. We got a bunch. Excited, scared, squat peeing, and 1.5 year. Okay. So we might have a few. Okay, squat peeing. Well, squat peeing that's just a preference on the dog. Or is she... Oh, excited and scared squat peeing. Okay. That would... Now I think I'm understanding you correctly. That actually requires basically desensitizing, because what that is an emotional response. And with that emotional response, the dog is just losing control of its bowels. So usually with that, what I do is I do a series of exercises for desensitizing, which basically gives the dog a thicker skin, so they have less reaction to things happening around them or to them. And then that way, they're much less likely to have those excited or inappropriate pee moments. Oh, Lord, she's coming. She coming is the chonk chart. Okay, got it. That's what that's a reference to. Okay, so basically with an excited pee, it takes a little while depending on the severity of the emotional response. And the emotion can be, yeah, as you said, it's excited or scared. Basically, it just sounds like she just doesn't have quite that callus. She's 1.5 years old. I don't necessarily want to... It's hard to say if it's just because of the lack of people being around. So a lot of dogs didn't get that emotional callus. So at this past year, for some odd reason. So this is a very common issue right now. This could be potential. Like, this happened before, but the number of times that this is happening has drastically increased, so that me and other trainers are commenting about it, going, okay, this is a thing. Dogs aren't being socialized enough. And by socialized, that just doesn't mean they have to like hang out with a bunch of people, but just not having as much exposure to different stimuluses. So therefore, they're overreacting to various things. In this case, obviously, squared squat peeing at 1.5 years of age. Also, you can end up... Some dogs are just nervous Nellies, just like people are. Some people have anxiety. Some people have depression. Dogs can have the same thing, and that's why they even have medication for them to reduce those types of behaviors. And sometimes it's so that could also potentially help. But first thing I usually do is try to work with the least invasive. So medication would be a little bit more invasive than just working them through a little bit of those issues. Very timid. She's around a lot of kids and people. Okay. She's around a lot of kids and people, but if those people are always the same people, then that doesn't develop that callus. What it usually is it's if they run into new people, new things, different things. But yeah, it still would be the same process. Basically, what I do when I walk into some places, I try to find those antecedents. What are the things that are happening before the behavior? So is it just when strangers come, or is it just when strangers come but outside of the house or inside the house? Does it not happen in certain environments? And try to narrow down those antecedents, those things leading to the behavior. And once we get those, I'm going to adjust my little computer here. All right. Once we get those narrowed down, then we can actually really put in more, we can really narrow down and start targeting that desensitizing. So we would target those things to get her used to more and more. And in some cases, it literally would just be, camera doesn't, always the same kids, still doing daycare. Okay, so it's daycare with same kids. So that could be it. She also, basically what I would do is I would really try to narrow down when specifically is it happening, because a lot of times, but out of our own frustration, I'll say it sometimes, like they always do this or never do that. Technically, that's never true. We can narrow down moments, and that trick is trying to take our emotions out of the situation and try to find those moments when the logical points of those behaviors are happening. And then once we do that, then we can start working on a more targeted desensitizing program, because we can do a more broad desensitizing. But if half the stuff that we're desensitizing her to doesn't need to happen, then we're kind of wasting half of our time, if that makes sense. So usually I like to target as close to what we figured out the actual antecedents, the actual issues to be. All right. Does anybody have any other questions? Go ahead, put those into the chat. Or if you need any clarification on anything that I said, go ahead, ask that as well. You can also ask me any questions on basically any animal thing you've seen. I probably have a good chance of being able to answer it just from my life experiences, both in the zoo field and animal ecology, wildlife rehabilitation, and as well as pet care and pet behaviorism. But yeah, if you have any questions whatsoever, go ahead, put those in the chat. If you just want to say hi, how are you doing? Let me know how your Wednesday's going. I do this every fourth Wednesday. We'll do this until 9 o'clock, and be happy to answer any of those questions whatsoever. All right. Sure, somebody's got a question coming up. We had quite a few actually, and some different ones than the chunk chart. I like that. I think I know what this person means with the chunk chart. Just want to double check. Yep, totally the body condition chart. And yes, every animal out there has that. So that is definitely a thing. And if anybody has any questions, go ahead, put those into the chat. I'd be happy to answer those. We are booking up quite a bit, so if you do want to get in, I always try to get as many clients as possible. I schedule basically every day of the week except for Wednesdays and Thursdays, and I do it from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. So usually we can find some time that'll work for people. But that said, I am getting a lot of calls in, even more than any in the past. So my suggestion is get in the book sooner rather than later. I always am trying to squeeze people in as much as possible, but it is getting tighter and more difficult, and I'm starting to have to push people further out. So if you have help that you need now, I would suggest sooner rather than later. But I always just say that because I also like to say, as a behaviorist, since I'm working with a brain, the longer the behavior's been going on, the longer they've learned it, the more memory they have for it. And the sooner you get it fixed, the cheaper it is, in all honesty, every time, 100% of the time. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead, put those into the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. And I will be on for the next 20 minutes. Answering any questions whatsoever regarding pet behavior, animal behavior, pet training, or any animal training. Maybe you saw something on YouTube and you're wondering if it was real. I'll be happy to go look it up real quick and see if it's appropriate. But yeah, just go ahead and put your comments if you want to say hi or how are you doing, or let me know how your Wednesday's going. How do you manage puppies with a dominant personality? Okay. So this is a little bit, we're getting into some very stereotypes. In modern day behavior work, we don't like to put labels on things. And this term dominant is a very, it's 9 times out of 10, it's not actually said with appropriate for what would be considered actually dominant. Honestly, but it's always the same. We use some operant conditioning and basically you just try to get the communication going. So what I do is I come in and I teach, I think 90+% of the time that somebody tells me that they have a dominant dog or dominant puppy, I come in and it just turns out it's actually what they thought the dog knew didn't actually know it. And then once we got that communication barrier broken through, everything goes a lot smoother. So the question is where does the word dominant mean? So that's the first thing I have to break down. What does dominant mean to you? In which case, because literally every person I work with, that term means something different. So I have to ask a lot of questions. Okay, the thing I'll be asking actually is, what does dominant look like behavior? What behavior? What is the dog doing when they are doing that dominant behavior? Are they just not listening to you? Or are they shoving themselves over other dogs in the household? It literally can mean a lot of different things. So first thing for me is I need to narrow down what dominant means in this situation. And once we figure that out, then we can work with the rest. But honestly, that's why I break everything down to I utilize clickers a lot in my training. It's really a process called operant conditioning, which is a much broader psychological situation. But we make sure that the communication between the human and the animal are 100%. And that clicker that I use, all that is just a sound piece to mean one thing: a treat is coming. And that's the most basic part of communication. So once I break communication down to that, then the puppy starts trying to figure out, wait, why did I get that treat? Why did I get that reward? And then they start thinking back, what did I just do? What did I just do? Oh, this did it. And then they do it again, and then the treat happens. So through consistency and through a very clear reward system, honestly, that's 99% of the time, that's what I work through with that. Oh, I got more clarification here. I'm unsure how to describe it. Out of the litter of 4, the one with them is very rambunctious, shoving other dogs in high energy. When separated from her siblings, she's much calmer. Okay, that might not actually be a dominance thing. That might be a hyper-social thing. So basically, that puppy loves everybody, dogs and other ones around them. So they're just constantly playing, constantly wanting to do that. So that might not be a dominance issue. Very rarely in that early phase when they're still with the rest of the litter, very rarely does that actually show to anything later in life. They did studies where people did certain behaviors and thought that the puppy that was pushing around the rest would grow up to be like X, Y, or Z. And they found that there's almost no correlation to those early puppy behaviors and those later behaviors in life, at least in the way that people would think it. If anything, it sounds like your dog, that puppy, is just hyper social and basically when in the presence of the other dogs just is super emotionally excited. And when you're really excited, you're just like, yes, this is great. Let's do the thing. Yeah. Kind of and sometimes people do it too, where I do it a lot, where I just become overbearing as a personality in a crowd. So that's because you're just excited to be there. And you have your introverts, you have your extroverts, and you have all those different levels in between. Dogs have the same thing. So that might actually be the situation with that. From my experience, the ones that are doing that have actually been very good dogs in the end. But you might also find somebody who says that they've had bad experiences with that, because But the reason for that is usually they're more willing to experiment. They're braver. So when I ask them to do things, they're willing to like try different things until they get the right answer. So usually the more rambunctious one, or the one that is more active in certain situations. Now, if that behavior goes away every time they're alone, then that might be a dependency kind of situation. So there's a lot of different things that could be going on, but generally, honestly, it all comes down to just early basic training. The sooner you get that understanding with the puppy and when they get rewards and when they don't, when rewards get taken away, etc., the more clear they are as they grow up. So that would probably be my best answer for that. It's kind of when they're that young, it's basically it just comes down to get basic training done as soon as possible. Sooner the better. I try to avoid aversives as much as possible in my training. Aversives being things like shock collars, choke chains, anything that the dog doesn't want, even those noisemaker canisters, stuff like that. I will have those, but only for like emergency situations such as breaking up dog fights or things of that nature. But when you avoid aversives, with the old school aversive training, which I originally was taught with back in the 90s, you couldn't start training until they were like at least like 4 to 6 months earliest, and then couldn't do the real hard stuff till later. With the more positive based training, I actually can start with a puppy. I've seen some actually get started by trainers while they're still with their mom, but really 8 weeks where they can wean away from their mom is when we say that you can start training. I think I know what you're talking about, Gerardo. Let me know if I'm totally off base along those lines. I think I know what you're talking about, but it's also hard. These things are hard to describe sometimes, so totally get that. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. As I said, when you're avoiding aversives, you can start training much sooner with a puppy because you're not breaking their spirit or anything. You're just guiding them to correct decisions. I make the joke because we say it with kids all the time, but make smart choices. When they make smart choices, good things happen, and then the pup wants to do those smart choices over and over and over again. Makes sense. She's very playful and a lot more curious than her siblings. Yeah, so that can be a double-edged sword because if they're more curious, then they're also more willing to learn on their own. But if you're trying to train a dog to do something like a task or a job, that's the one you usually want because they will pick things up way faster because they're at least willing to get the wrong answer sometimes. I have some dogs that even without any aversive training, as soon as I say, nope, that's wrong, and I don't even follow it up with any punishment, just nope, they will just shut down. They're like, I got it wrong, which I get because I know people that do the same thing. I got it wrong. I hate this now forever kind of deal. So, but the ones that are like, oh, I got that wrong. Wait, let me try something else. How about this? How about this? How about this? And then when they get it right, boom. But at the same time, those also tend to be the ones that also figure out how to get out of the fencing, know how to undo this or that, etc. Kind of situation. So yeah, that's usually a double-edged sword. That's usually the puppy that I tend to go after, is the more rambunctious, outgoing one. Most of the time. All right. Does anybody have any other questions, or if need clarification on anything I said, go ahead, put that in the chat. If you have, just want to say hi, let me know how your Wednesday's going. Go ahead, put that in there. I'll answer anything with training. I'll answer anything with anything animal related. I will answer, so long as it's appropriate. But yeah, whether it's wild animals, domestic animals, I've had experience with all the above. So go ahead and put those in the chat. And I also work with more than just dogs. I do work with dogs. I've got birds, cats, now pigs, plus all the zoo animals that I've worked with, so owls and whatnot. But anything can be trained, and anything can be using positive reinforcement. We can actually go quite a long ways with a lot of different behaviors. But go ahead, put that in the chat. I'll be on for another 10 minutes or so. And for those that don't know, I do this every fourth Wednesday at 8 o'clock. I just answer whatever questions people might have. And I'll do this on both YouTube and on Facebook. And I'm looking to add a couple more online venues as well. I also do online consultations as well as in person. For online consultations, as long as you have a good internet connection and know how to use Zoom, and I can guide you through that process. I also worked doing that long before the pandemic with the zoo. I did the distance learning education for quite a number of years. So yeah, just go ahead. I'll help you either online or if you want to do face-to-face. If it's Garden City and Holcomb, the pricing is at my website, BBBehaviors.com. If you are outside of Garden City or Holcomb, I still will travel to you. There is a travel fee just because of the time and gas that has to go into all of that. There's a travel fee for each of those trips, but I do travel up to about 150-mile radius for those sessions as well. But I do suggest getting those booked in sooner rather than later. I'm just going to admit I've never been as busy as I am now, and I'm not sure if it's because of maybe it's the checks or something, but the schedule's booking up quite a bit, and I'm feeling bad having to push people further out, but there's only so many hours in a day that we can get things done. So go ahead, put that into just get a hold of me if you need any more assistance. If it's something simple, I'll be happy to answer it here on this this format, this online social media format, or if you need more closer help, just get in touch with me. I'd be happy to help you out best I can. Get everybody working together with the family. I do take anxiety and aggression clients as well, and I do also do some dog walking. Usually that's for a lot of my clients that have more picky animals, and since I have that relationship, I started doing that for some clients, as well as doing some dog sitting as well for clients. Those are obviously more limited because those take up so much time. But if you need any help whatsoever, just go ahead and get a hold of me. And if you have any more questions, go ahead and put those into the chat. Oh, I see a nice long question here. Buffy. Oh, I think this is a compliment. We got a German Shepherd and never had a big energetic dog before. And after getting her, I got concerned about different behaviors these dogs can have. Therefore, at 8 weeks, I got Whitney to help me be proactive so that I don't have things chewed up. Yeah, we don't have things chewed up. And with any large breed, you always worry about big dogs because the amount of damage they could do if they did freak out or on anybody. And your little girl is doing great. She takes nail trims now. She goes in public for the most part. She's doing great now. And just want to thank you for the info and find it helpful. And it's excellent. I'm glad that I was helpful. If you need more clarification, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll be on every fourth Wednesday on here just to answer any questions if anything comes up. But thank you all for coming out and visiting with me. I got about 5 more minutes. So if anybody wants to put any last questions or anything, go ahead, put those into the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you just want to say hey and let me know how your Wednesday, I guess this is a Wednesday. It's the fourth Wednesday. Doug. I only do this on Wednesdays. So if you want to let me know how your Wednesday's going, if you want to brag about your dog, go right ahead. I love hearing pet brags. Right now, I actually recently just started working on teaching it's my emotionally challenged Husky Dane mix. We're working on him doing a blood draw, and teaching him so that when we do take him in to get a blood draw, because it looks like he's got allergies, hooray. Once we get those, and trying to record some videos. The training's at the early stages, so I'm actually adapting it almost as at every session, because we're just finding different little quirks, and we're trying to mimic the what they would be doing in a veterinary office to get the blood draw from I believe, I can't remember what, I think they said a caudal vein. I think that's the vein like right up here or something like that. Anyway, on the front, on the forearm or foreleg for the pup. So we're working on that, and I'm hoping that once we get that together, I will put together a video with that. I'm trying to get back into getting the videos made and done. I still have one of a client that I really want to share with everybody. It was a deaf client, and we had to adapt the clickers, and we actually used flashlights instead of a clicker to let the pup know when they did the right thing. And we were able to get a number of behaviors under control with that pup. So once I get back in and into the routine of doing some video editing, I've got the catch-22 because I do my own video editing. So when I'm booked up, I have less time to do all those fun little side projects that show all the neat things we're doing. But I'm hoping to get back into the swing of things. But if anybody has any last questions, I got 4 more minutes. Go ahead and put those in the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you want to brag about your dog or just say hi, let me know where you're at in the world. That also works as well. But you can be in any question. If you saw a meme that you're like, that seems sus, go ahead and let me know. And I'll let you know if it's actually sus or if it actually is valid or potentially real. All right, got about 3 minutes left. But that doesn't mean if your question comes up, I will answer it. I don't know. Keep going until I feel like the question has been properly answered. But otherwise, I thank everybody for coming out and visiting with me today. Thank you for your questions. I love helping people out, and I hope that I did. I love hearing success stories, especially from the ones that I got to work with, just because all the investment, both the family and myself have put into those efforts. So love hearing those types of stories and things. No problem. Not a problem. I have no qualms doing this. I enjoy it, and I want to help as many fur and scale and feathered families out there, just to make sure everybody's communicating much better on the just make sure everyone's communicating better, and having keeping pets in homes is really one of the reasons why I started this business. Just love the idea of helping out families in the area. All right, got about 2 minutes left. If anybody has any last questions, otherwise I will start signing off. So the next time I will be doing this will be 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will be the 26th of May. At that point, I would have orbited around the sun one more time. So if I look grayer, that's why. Thanks to you, Zoe has turned out to be the sweetest German Shepherd, as well behaved or behavior. Yes, that makes me so happy. Every time I hear stories like that, that always makes me happy. I love success stories. But it looks like we are coming to an end. I thank everybody for coming out tonight. Got about a few more seconds. If somebody's typing fast, type. If you got to get your question in, not a problem. I'll be happy to answer if it comes in before the thing, or at least before I click the off button. But thanks for all coming out. Thanks for giving me your questions. Thanks for trusting me and giving me your time as well. So I wish you all best of luck. And if you have any other questions, once again, you can reach me, Whitney Buckman with Buckman Best Behaviors, at BBBehaviors.com, 620-805-9429, or you can email me at whitbuckman@bbbehaviors.com. And with that, I will be signing off, and you guys all have a great rest of your evening. Bye now.